Tomorrow is the 17-year anniversary of the terror attacks of September 11, 2001. Where were you that day? High school. 9th grade. Algebra? Principal made an announcement over the intercom along the lines of, "Teachers, you may want to turn on your TVs. Something very important is happening." Teacher replies, "It's usually not important, so we won't bother." I think about that from time to time. Damn, almost the exact same for me. End of second was the first plane just hitting. Nobody knew what was happening yet. Third period was algebra, nothing that's happening is more important than the lesson. Fourth period, WTF did I miss? Did you have the same old witch lady that I did? Actually no. Besides this instance, I actually really liked her, she was pretty good teacher. I guess algebra just changes people. Either that or she knew something was wrong and she was trying to give you one last hour or so of normalcy. Senior year of high school. Didn't have a first period that year. Woke up to my friend on the home answering machine. Thought that was weird as he never called me in the morning. Ran to the kitchen. Picked up the phone and asked what was up. He told me to turn on the TV. I asked what channel and he said doesn't matter. At that point I knew something big had happened. Spent the next hour or so watching people jump out of the building and then the second tower collapse. Went to school afterward and the most any teacher had was a radio. Spent the rest of the day telling other people what I'd seen before I left home and watching my teachers cry. I had just gotten to my office in Midtown Manhattan, about 30 blocks north of Ground Zero, just after the first plane hit. I was on the 40th floor with a clear line of sight to WTC. Everyone was against the windows watching, but the smoke was beginning to get too thick to see anything, so I went back to watch it unfold on TV when the second plane hit. The power was out and trains were not running, so I started to walk home along with everyone else. Imagine 7 million people walking home. I was eventually joined by people coming from further south covered in ash. Edit, turns out 4 million people commute to Manhattan, not 7. Also several tens of thousands got ferries out. Edit, 500,000 were ferried out. I feel you, buddy. After getting a ferry out of downtown, I walked to Newark before getting a ride home. Ducked up story, my sister was working in Midtown. She wasted no time. Once it became apparent what was going on, she left her building, hailed a cab to Northern NJ. Driver didn't even think to gouge her on price, lol. If we had Uber back then, I can only imagine the surge pricing. When there was a shooting a few years ago, Uber got in a shit ton of trouble cause of surge pricing. They ended up refunding everyone though. I assume a similar thing would happen in this case. Surge pricing is an automated system, so it would go up at first, but as soon as the news hit the Uber offices, they would switch it off. If it was out of office hours, I dunno. Might take a while for someone to get to the office to make the switch. Sitting at work, enlisted in the Air Force. We were bullshitting, literally our legs up on our desk, talking about whatever. Someone comes in the room and shouts, "You need to move your cars away from the building right now. Our country is under attack." With WTF looks on our faces, we walk into the other room where there's a TV in time to watch the second plane hit. We worked 18-hour days for the next 2 weeks preparing to deploy. Worked in a deployable communications unit and were dropped onto an island with nothing, and set up a full communications suite to support 1,500 people. Edit, thank you kind stranger for the gold. That must have been a terrifying time to be in the service. I had a friend whose son joined the Navy right after the Cole. As I recall, just a few weeks before. Time did a great write-up about the West Point class of 2005 and some of the cadets who had just shown up a couple months earlier for training, expecting a peacetime army, and had to watch as the academy was transformed into something that was completely different from what they were promised. I was in treatment for alcohol and drugs, at the Gables in NYC. I was 21 years old and just trying to figure out my sober life. I credit 911 as being the one thing that has kept me sober till 38. I'll edit it because you all are pedantic AF, I'm sober, I'm 38, I plan on keeping it that way. As nasty as you can be, I love you all, Reddit. Junior in high school. I was in Mrs. H's English class when the first plane hit, but no one had heard before class let out. I had just walked into Mr. C's psych class and was in the process of saying we watching a movie today. When the second plane hit. My friend D told me it was real. 2 years later he was killed in Iraq. Of the 8 people at my lunch table that day, only 2 of us are still alive, 3 in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan, and 1 was an idiot who lost a race to a train. Damn, man. Sorry for your losses. Thanks. My graduating class had a weirdly high mortality rate for the first 5 years after graduating. There were 235 of us in May 2003, but by our 5-year reunion something like 20 of us were dead. Between Iraq, Afghanistan, a couple of genuine tragedies and several tragedies that made the people who knew them think, yeah, that sounds about right, one of which made national news. No, I won't say which. Our first reunion was a rather somber affair. #X200B. We've only lost a couple since then, and honestly, given the number of my classmates that meth addicts or alcoholics before they could drive, I'm pleasantly surprised. I was a junior in college. I had a 3-hour chemistry lab in the morning. The first plane hit just before lab started. There weren't smartphones or anything, so we knew nothing other than that. For 3 hours we thought a little Cessna or something had crashed. Shrug, the world was a bit different when we came out of the lab. My afternoon lab was cancelled. 5th grade. The teachers weren't allowed to tell us what was going on, but also wouldn't let anyone out of their sight. Recess was indoors, we were escorted between classes, extra security in the lunchroom, etc. Lots of kids' parents took them out of school early. We could all sense something was up, but had no idea what. It wasn't until I got home in the late afternoon that I finally learned the truth. The funny sad thing was that I didn't actually get what the big deal was. My parents were shitting bricks thinking we were about to go to war. They were right, and I'm just like, what's the big deal? It would be years before the magnitude of the event, and what it must have been like for my parents to live through it, really sunk in. Glad it wasn't just me. I was in 5th grade too, but we didn't take nearly as many of the precautions that day. I knew it was bad, but I didn't fully understand just how bad it was and why. Same. My school didn't really do anything of note that I can remember. What I do remember is sitting at the kitchen counter watching cartoons and eating cereal. I looked at the clock and realized, holy cow. I'm going to be late. So I went upstairs to see my mom sitting in front of the TV, crying, while on the phone with someone. I didn't quite grasp it, I was 10 at the time. I just knew that my friend's uncle worked in one of the towers and they couldn't get a hold of him. I was sad for her, but beyond that I didn't grasp the severity of it. I was sitting on a school bus about to leave the school parking lot to go to one of the museums in D.C. The bus driver started to drive, but stopped when the principal came running out with her hands in the air. She yelled at the teachers to get all the kids into their classrooms. Initially, all of us thought that the reason why we couldn't go was because one of the boys on the bus was having a temper tantrum. So we all blamed him. Which made him cry and scream even more. This was 5th grade BTW. Anyways, we get up to the classroom and slowly each kid is getting picked up early. We didn't know why, but only a few of us stayed until the end of the day. I get off the bus and one of the kids that was picked up early was yelling that the Twin Towers in Pentagon were hit. I didn't understand until I got home and my mom showed me the news. She was crying because she hadn't heard from my stepdad, who was supposed to be in a meeting at the Pentagon by 9:30. So my sisters and I just waited. He came home and everybody was so happy and thankful. He told us he was running late and called to tell the major he would be there in 10 minutes. He parked his car and started to head in but forgot his ID badge and ran back to his car. Heard a loud noise, turned around and watched the airplane hit the building. All of the people in that meeting died. He didn't sleep well for a long time after that. There are so many stories like this that honestly give me chills. 1 or 2 seconds between life and death is a cold thing to experience. For sure, friend of mine missed his flight. South Tower flight. He has the ticket framed. There's a joke in Family Guy where Brian says he was supposed to be on one of the 911 flights and Stewie says no, me too. That's because both characters are voiced by Seth MacFarlane and he was scheduled to be on the North Tower flight but missed it because he was too hungover. I was in 6th grade. My mom woke me up early sometime after the first plane hit to see the news. Saw the second plane hit on live TV, I think I saw the South Tower come down, then I went to school, West Coast. Quietest bus ride ever, with the radio on talking about everything. My teacher at the time bike commuted from the next town over every day, so he heard about none of this. In fact, he thought we were making it up and got mad at all us kids about it, basically told us to shut up about it. Yeah, he must have felt like a jerk later. Also in 6th grade. I remember watching it in the classroom and not really grasping what had just happened. Then a lot of friends who had family members who served started getting called to the office and my history teacher looked at all of us and just said, "You will never forget what has happened today. You will remember this moment for the rest of your lives. He was right.